Hi, everyone. Welcome to What Just Happened. Today, we welcome Regina Ye, co-founder and CEO of Topsort. Hi, Regina.
Hi.
It's really great to see you and have you on What Just Happened.
Thank you for having me.
It's so exciting to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here as well, and I'm excited for this conversation.
You're the CEO and founder. And what got you excited to do what you do at Topsort? And what do you do at Topsort?
The company got started around a little over 4 years ago now. Me and my two other co-founders, we thought, why don't we democratize what works really well for the big tech in Silicon Valley and turn it into modular AI-based sort of infrastructure for businesses, retailers to bridge the gap and then now build their own version of ads offering that can really benefit the vendors. And then why don't we also think about if ad networks could be built in a way that is based on products and not necessarily creepy or based on information that's private. We were three engineers. Everybody had engineering background and we're very focused on building something that we found useful and very different starting points, but arrived at the same conclusion. I had two co-founders, Michael, and who's a very good mathematician and got very obsessed with the inner workings of the auction mechanism. And then Francisco was a really good engineer in building complex engineering systems. And then I actually spent a lot of time in being a vendor, being a CPG brand myself to work with retailers and spending money on Amazon ads, Google ads, Meta ads, and felt very frustrated with seeing a very different black and white between sort of the retailer world where brands have no information and very little ability to influence the sell-through rate versus the three main companies in the DTC world at the time were really dealing with like very complex ad products and also increasing ad costs. And I thought this was an interesting problem to solve.
So you found a need, and you came up with a solution, right?
I lived through the pain too. Like I think I lived through the problem and really wish I had this back then. And I know a lot of brands have this. And then like the more conversations we had validated that it's that. So at Topsort, my role changes every so often. And nowadays I focus a lot more on products and sales.
So do you have a ton of inbound because of the pain that has been in the industry, and then also currently?
The way we see our role in the ecosystem is that there's such a multitude of like problems to solve today in the industry. If you talk to different, I think right now there are like more than 200 retail media networks in the US. So if you go talk to every single one of them, people might say a lot of similar pains, but also everybody would say we're unique because of so and so, especially these retailers that have been around for a long time, have very strong identity that's tied to how they view their media offering and their core business. And we think it's true to some extent, but also you can solve a lot of the pain points with tech. And to have a really good ad business or media business, you need to have both very good tech and that nice execution and business operation piece of it. So then our mission is to really provide all these tools that we've heard along this journey from different players in the ecosystem saying, because of where I am in this journey, right? Maybe you started 7 years ago, or maybe you just started, you need to catch up, then you need different tools to boost the business or kind of determine where you want to go. And we want to have the best set of tools to help them achieve their goals and get there. And that's how we see ourselves. And in terms of how that resonates, I think it is very black and white. I think a lot of these retailers get pitched a lot by players now in the ecosystem, and it's us, it's a bunch of competitors. It's getting definitely more like crowded and competitive to the point that I think they're developing a bit of resilience to being pitched, right? So then when they hear what we have to offer, it's either they're like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. Where have you guys been? Or it's, yeah, but how is it different? And that's where like we know right away if it works or not. So whenever we get into those conversations where you feel a very strong people really believe in the pain and have like better understanding the pain points than us, that's when the conversations just fly.
Where we are in retail media right now is the haves and have-nots. The have-nots have a huge wall to scale to get there. And it's a bit of a challenge. would having Topsort as part of the process simplify the execution and allow for more of the have-nots to have?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's almost, I think there's everybody that's in that sphere minus the giants, like an Amazon, that you can categorize them into haves or have-nots. But if you were to look at it with the Amazons, even the really big ones in the haves start to have a bit of, wait, we're just at the beginning. We're still at the very infancy of our media offering. Sure, it's in the billions, but it's really a tenth or even less than when you compare to the really big players. So there's a general understanding of people feeling still it's very early days. And there's a lot of like Wild West things going on because it's so early and the opportunity is so huge. You can really do a lot of things as long as you throw a lot of things at the wall, like something's going to stick and then you can scale. But then I think there's a general understanding from the haves thinking about how can I get smarter, looking a little bit more under the hood. And they're thinking about how do they innovate to catch up with the really big players to accelerate the transition from what we're looking at retail media in the US. It's still less than half the market going to non-Amazon, right, at Walmart. So that's what I think a lot of the big guys have been thinking about, what we see in our conversations. And then with the smaller ones, they need to make a decision of like how independent do they want to be and what are the places they need to build versus buy and how much time they really have and realistically like where they can, what are the core problems for them to tackle. We do hear a lot of things around just the like operational challenge of building an ad business. It's way more than what we hear, like what we a lot of the retailers previously thought. And I think even more than when we initially set out to start this company, we thought, okay, if you just have the APIs and the engineers will be happy and then your business will grow. I think there's an opportunity to totally scale beyond doing a lot of the manual operations and then the whole space grows because that's really where we're stuck. It could grow even faster if we were to break through those.
Do you think part of the reason that they're limiting resources is because of the ROI? My other understanding is that there's a little bit of pushback because the scale and the expense that it takes to build it doesn't really show a return in maybe enough time or whatever, that internally you get the CFO starting to lose patience. And so it starts to cannibalize itself.
One thing I feel that would be really useful education for everyone in this space is to know what a really good retail media business even looks like on the P&L, right? And then how good is your margin and how many people you're supposed to have to support this many vendors or this many campaigns. We've gone through a few years of every CFO being sold really beautiful dreams in retail media. And now they're saying, hey, where is the return? And did you guys hit your numbers? Or why is it just 40% fill rate? And people are getting a little bit impatient there. But it's interesting because it's hard to diagnose sometimes where things went wrong. Because then you can say, oh, like it's because the sales or the brands, this category wasn't doing so well. But really a lot of it is also the efficiency and the speed of the teams able to iterate. And the tech does play a big role. Yeah. But it's hard to know when you've made a decision because it takes a few months to really know if it works or not.
One of the conversations I had from one of the early kind of leaders in the space was really understanding what it takes to set it up and understanding the commitment that it takes is a key to the success going forward.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of chatting with DoorDash at Shop Talk, and that's how I learned about you. So the partnership was announced a couple of days before, maybe the day of the show, and had them on my show, and it was really great to hear about it. But now I want to learn more about the machinations of it from you. So tell us about what that announcement was and what it is you're doing.
For sure. Topsort, we have been spending the past few years focused on being the best retail media infrastructure. And we think a lot about what does that mean, right? Because being the infrastructure for the ecosystem means more than just providing the ad server or retail media platform. So that's where a lot of the new products and the new partnerships come into play because we started gaining a deeper understanding of the pain points of the industry. And over time, we got ideas. And I think a lot of it comes from very inspiring ideas with partners like DoorDash. So one of the things we both believe is that retail media is going to enter standardization. And the big pain right now that's really plaguing the whole ecosystem is this idea of very fragmented offering within one retail media network or just across different networks. And we have developed a programmatic retail media exchange that help address some of the problems. One of it being audience standardization. Another one could be attribution standardization. And then you also would look into catalog standardization. For example, today, if Heineken in the US wants to target all the retail media networks that sell their beer, it's very hard to do so because one SKU of beer could be labeled 10,000 different ways across different media networks through distributors, through self-service, catalogs, or through just like different ways of being labeled. And these problems were not like solvable before without AI. And now we can actually do it with machine learning to duplicate and really have a bit of a standardized offering. And that's where this comes in. So we launched our programmatic exchange for retail media, and DoorDash is our first partner in the US for that. And we're super excited to offer better ways for brands to buy across RMMs and play our role in terms of contributing in the ecosystem for easier ways to buy and scale media offering. Because I was looking at this chart the other day that was super interesting. It's essentially the amount of years search and social and retail media took to hit 100 billion in ad spending. And our view is, I think everybody knows the market's gonna get bigger. So then we question ourselves, how can we play a bigger role in helping the budget enter the space?
So would you characterize this offering that you did with DoorDash as part of Retail Media 3.0?
Yes. Yeah. We think thinking about 1.0 is very much purely network, right? Early days, hook logic, Criteo, like you have somebody bring you the demand, but it doesn't really scale and it's very heavy in terms of manual ops. So it doesn't penetrate as many retailers. And then you have the Citrus Epsilon where it enables some private markets and start to sell a little bit directly, but then doesn't mean you're always selling in the most scalable rate cards or the best pricing. And then the second generation, I think we started seeing about 2 years ago, a lot of talks around like bringing things in-house, build your own ad server, which I think solves some problem, but doesn't really solve too much of the growth problem that the CFOs might be getting curious about. And we think like 3.0 is very much open. It's very transparent, and there's a way things can scale through programmatic ways of retail media. And it seems to be what a lot of people are waiting for, that the future of retail media could be programmatic. I think the question is like, how do you do it in a way that it still preserves all the flexibility the previous offerings have? And how can we do it in a way that feels custom, but yet very unified and easy to understand?
And part of that is your recent announcement, your product launches. Very exciting. Congratulations. Tell us about that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're super excited about the product offerings. So one of the founding missions of the company, when we started this company, actually, we had one tagline in all of our email signatures that was saying democratize modern marketplace technology. And that basically meant we wanted to take a look at what really works for the big tech like Google, like Meta, Amazon, and a lot of what we saw is just like sponsor listings and auctions and auto bidding. So we spent a lot of time on just that. And then as we gain more experience and just working with different customers in the space, we started thinking about how AI plays a big role in this. And we made some announcements earlier this year that are key hires in AI joining us in our Menlo Park office. And part of that is that we started thinking about how can we separate the ad intelligence piece of building a successful ad business and make it available and really open to the ecosystem to enhance as well. Because nowadays, when we're looking at what we would consider the second half of the game, where a lot of retailers are not really shopping for their first retail media platform anymore, and they're really looking for that incremental value from the next offering. And hopefully that becomes something that evolves with them and stays there for some time. So then we started looking at how we're truly different from everybody else in the ecosystem. And then one thing that sort of jumped out is how our willingness to open our machine learning models and make it very collaborative between us and the in-house teams. And then that's one thing that we've seen just resonates really well with the data science teams or the engineering teams. And then sort of one thing that's very interesting is like retailers have so much first party data and they're getting really smart with their first party data, but they need the sandbox to experiment, to do better predictions and to really separate the serving versus the quality score and getting into nitty gritties of it. So then we decided, okay, why don't we just take that ad intelligence piece and make it a standalone thing where we would offer all the other parts of what we would call data science, and we would do it for you in the ad serving model to turn it into a complete open box where you can have the auto bidding as its own endpoint, the pacing as its own endpoint, the quality score as its own endpoint, and just A/B test the hell out of it. And I think that's one thing that brands and retailers really love, because if they're able to just test exhaustively and know that they know their business is the best, they have the most amount of data. And in the end, if they're looking at a $1 billion business, they're able to drive 0.5% of CTR across the board. That's huge. So that's what that product aims to do. It's also a very fun internal exercise to push our tech teams to challenge themselves. And then the in-store piece also comes from actually earlier this year when we were at NRF, when Amazon launched the Amazon Ads for Retailers offering. And then we had a lot of conversations with retailers right there, where a lot of them started sharing about how they see their offering truly very different from Amazon's, and thinking about the moat they would need to have in their media offering against Amazon's. And one part of it is the in-store that we thought it was super interesting, is that a lot of their traffic, a lot of their data still happens in store. And sure, like retail media has been talking about in store, I think, for over a year now. It's still a very exciting topic, but from our partnerships and our research into the market, it seems a lot of the solutions focus on delivering the ad for the screen in store, but not so much on just making do with something that's already existing in the store. There are all these beacons, all these sort of signals, Bluetooth, that are collecting signals and traffic patterns in these different aisles. And in the stores, every retailer has a lot of those. And there's a way to actually bring that data through machine learning as a digitized machine learning model that you can virtualize, like per aisle becomes per category, and make predictions based on top of that. And that we thought it was super interesting and is actually truly meaningful for bringing in-store retail media into the fold.
That's huge. I feel like I'm in school, and I know the listeners are going to be highly interested in this. So you had your Topsort developer days. Tell us about it.
It is our first ever developer event, and it follows our annual tradition of getting everybody in the same place to sort of just hang out, hack a little bit, and get together. It started when first year after we started the company. It was COVID times. I think everybody was losing their minds, and we thought, okay, let's just get together and work together in one place, as we started in a distributed way. And then over time, we started getting hubs. We still feel like it's a very much treasured tradition in the company. And then this year, we thought we could add a twist to it, because last year we started having people come to the offsite. Our customers, some retailers would come and give us some talks, and we thought we can push it over to the next level and not only invite some retailers, some customers to give us talks, but also really bring our true colors, like true characteristics together, where let's talk about the things we build and let's bring the builders together. It also is very unique because in the industry, I think you and I probably have been to a lot of the events that feel more towards sales and marketing people in retail media, which is great, but it feels like there's a vacuum for this developer product builder mentality type of event. And that's what we wanted to get to, is to have the builders to get together and talk about it. And we also launched a new set of features, including the in-store and the programmatic retail media exchange, as well as the AI optimization tools from Topsort. So super excited. Definitely a very fun event. And we got hundreds of people and all just talked about the geeky things in Palo Alto.
Congratulations. It's so great to hear that you're getting everyone together, you're working the nuts and bolts, and that you're growing retail media, improving it along the way. Who knows what's coming down the pike for retail media 4 and 4.0 and 5.0, and we'll be watching. And I congratulate you and I thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Christine.
And that is what just happened. I'm Christine Russo.